In this episode, we're going to go over how your past experiences can affect your future performance as an athlete. Hey there, I'm Eli Straw, mental performance coach and the founder of SuccessStartsWithin.com. Now, before I get into this episode, I did want to mention that if you're interested in the one-on-one coaching I offer or the Confident Competitor Academy, which is a self-paced online course, I put links to those in the description below. Now, this idea of having our past performances impact our future performance is an important one for us to examine as athletes because, you might be playing with fear, for example, and really be wondering, why am I so afraid of performing poorly? I know that nothing could really happen to me. Maybe coach yells at me, maybe we lose, but I'm not going to physically get hurt, so why am I experiencing so much fear? Well, if we were to talk and we looked back through your past experiences, maybe we would land on a game, possibly even a year ago or so, that was very negative. Maybe you made a mistake or a few mistakes, and maybe your coach got mad at you, maybe your team lost, and then maybe coach screamed at you after the game, and all of that led to this intensely negative experience for you. Now, when something like that happens to you as an athlete, that leaves an imprint on your mind, right? Specifically, it leaves an imprint on your subconscious mind. And moving forward, that past experience can actually be affecting our future performances to where we're playing with more fear, not fear for any other reason other than the fact that we don't want to experience all those negative emotions that we experienced in the past. When that happens, we need to make sure that we are working through these past negative experiences. Now, in addition to having a negative experience like that in the past where you made a mistake or you had a really bad performance, in addition to that affecting your future performances, we could also see the past experience of an injury affect you in a similar way. All right, so I said that if you have a bad game in the past, coach yells at you, you make a bunch of mistakes, it's a negative, embarrassing experience. That embarrassing experience will leave an imprint on your subconscious mind, and then in the future, you'll be playing with more fear and anxiety because you're trying to avoid having to experience something similar. We'll also see that happen when you have an injury. Now, with the injury, the emotional pain that's involved or the physical pain that's involved, right? Whether it's the actual pain of the injury itself or whether it's the pain in terms of the frustration and the irritation that you experience when you're missing out on games and going through the recovery process, both of those are things that you want to avoid in the future as well. Now, in one-on-one coaching, I've worked with a lot of players who are coming back from injuries, right? And probably one of the toughest ones for them to come back through and the most grueling in terms of the recovery process is an ACL. I did an ACL tear where they had surgery and then they're coming back and they're working through that, and it's months and months and months until they are able to return to play. When I'm working with a player like that, right, specifically an ACL tear where they have such an extended period of time when it comes to recovering, one of the things that we have to make sure of is that when they do return to play, they are not playing too timidly or holding themselves back because they are afraid of re-injuring themselves. Not just because the injury itself hurts, but because they know that it's just this long, grueling process, and they're gonna end up missing a season or maybe even a full summer or something, right? Because they have to go through this process of working through the injury and working on recovering. So then we see that the pain itself from the injury, but also the frustration and the emotional pain and all those negative emotions that are attached to the recovery process, they can affect us in the future because now we're trying to avoid having that happen again. And in the future, this is where you'll find yourself playing it safe, playing timidly, holding yourself back because you are scared of getting injured. So what we're seeing here is that whether it's because of a negative experience in terms of a poor performance or an injury, or honestly anything else that happens in the past, but those are the two main ones that I see, we can actually have those experiences stick with us and then impact our performance in the future. We could see this in a situationally specific sense, right? Where maybe a catcher makes a bad throw back to the pitcher and a run scores, and now they are afraid and they're struggling to make throws back to the pitcher. Maybe a basketball player missed a couple shots late in the game, their coach yelled at them, and now they're hesitating and finding it difficult to pull the trigger on their shots, right? Same thing with a golfer. Maybe they're standing over a 3-foot putt and they miss it, they lose the tournament. Now in the future, they really struggle with those 3-foot putts because they're remembering that past experience. The reason that we want to be aware of that is because it helps us understand what it is that we are trying to avoid and what's driving this fear and driving this anxiety that we are currently performing with. Then we want to work on working through that past experience, and then also using specific sports psychology tools and techniques to help us as we are going into that similar situation in the future. Now, when it comes to working through these past experiences, it is absolutely best to do so with a professional such as myself, working through mental performance coaching, or, any sort of kind of coaching or therapy sense where you're working to process through those past experiences. So like I said, if you are interested in learning more about one-on-one coaching so that I can help you with that, I've put a link to that in the description below. But I want to give you something within this episode, or an exercise that you can do in this episode, to help you try to work through processing that past experience on your own. And it's a little bit of a weird exercise, because what it's going to have you do is come face to face with that past experience and just get used to kind of thinking about it and processing through what happened. So what you want to do is you want to think about if there's any situation you can think of in the past where you struggled, you had a really negative experience, a bad game, or you had an injury. I want you to think about that if you believe it is currently affecting your future performance. Now, if you're not sure, you can't land on one, but you still feel like you're playing with fear or anxiety, I want you to think about anything in the past that you would classify as an intensely negative experience, whether it was just coach yelling at you, losing an important game, anything like that. Then what I want you to do is write about it, right? Just spend some time. I would give yourself about 10, 20 plus minutes in a safe space where you can sit down and you can write about this. And just write as much as you can about what happened. And then you're going to find yourself writing about how much it hurt, how much you don't want to have that happen in the future. You're going to find yourself writing about how it affected other people, how other people were thinking about you, and how they thought you were a bad player, right? Just allow yourself to write anything and everything. And the point here is you want to start writing and then allow your writing to take over, right? Allow your mind to just guide you where your mind's going to guide you with this process. Don't try to control anything in terms of what you specifically need to be writing. Once you get finished with this exercise, I would recommend that you review it over the course of a few days. Now, you might be wondering, well, why would you want to think back to that past experience? Well, because what we're doing is, if we review, and by the way, when I say review that, what I mean is kind of go through that process again, review the experience again, and go through and write it down again like that. Not actually reading over the writing that you did earlier. But what you're doing when you go through an exercise like this, especially if you do it multiple days in a row, is that you're actually processing through what happened. And when we have intensely negative experiences in the past affect us in the future, it shows that we did not process through that experience as well as we needed to. And that's just the way our minds operate when it's something negative like that, right? I mean, I was talking to an athlete recently about this very same idea, and she was telling me how when I asked her to think about that past experience, she said that she had a tough time thinking about it because her mind was trying to resist thinking about it because it is so negative. But we have to process through it so that we can get to the point where we can think back to it, and it, doesn't really do anything for us. We can't change what has happened in the past, but we can change how emotionally attached we are to what happened in the past. And if we're so emotionally attached to these things that happened in the past, it's natural that we'll try to fear being in a similar situation in the future, or fear failing in that same way, or re-injuring ourselves. And then that's where we actually see this change and affect our performance. So go through and write down, like I said, 10 to 20 minutes, just let your mind take you where it takes you, write anything you want about what happened, and then repeat this process for multiple days in a row. And then what you want to do moving forward in your games is recognize that this past experience has been affecting you. Now, that's not giving yourself an excuse, but what it is doing is giving yourself the opportunity to say, all right, well, I'm not going to let that affect me anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to really focus on playing the way I want to play, right? And then this is where you can use positive self-talk. You can use specific controllable objectives to focus on what you want to do for that performance. But it first begins with us really working to process through this previous experience. And so, like I said, if you want, more kind of one-on-one help when it comes to processing through a past experience. There are a lot of different techniques that we can use as well. Click the link that I put below for one-on-one mental coaching. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos each week on sports psychology and mental training. And if you're interested in any of the programs I have available, I've put links to those in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I wish you the best of success in all that you do.